Hi everyone, today I want to go over our new update that was released a week ago. We'll talk about all the issues, features, how to get it, why it was created, how it works, how it performs, and what results it delivers. Let's start with the fact that initially we had a neural network where you could request a forecast for any market in real time, and a number of problems arose, such as many users when make a request. They don't understand at what moment to make the request. First. Second, that the neural network is an auxiliary tool and it will never give you a 100% guarantee or show you a win every time, and it doesn't provide any guarantees. Third, that calculating risk management is very important and you need to follow it and always enter the market only with proper risk management calculations. Without risk management, any forecast will inevitably, sooner or later, lead to a complete loss of your deposit if you don't stick to the rules of risk management. Third, the amplitude of the movement calculated by the neural network in advance may not match reality because the neural network bases its calculations on processing clusters of data, historical data, and real-time data. And based on all of this, the sources, it selects the best model that should play out in the future, but that doesn't guarantee that this model will be exactly the same. The amplitude may differ. The direction of movement will most likely be correct, and if the probability of it playing out is high, then it is likely to be accurate. However, at this point, users have generally decided to ignore the probability of it playing out and simply not pay attention to it. So because of this, we decided to create a signal system where a person can filter and select only those price movement models and signals that suit them best, based on various filtering criteria. In other words, before you could parse analytics and data calculations as well as data clusters from the neural network in real time, but you could still make a mistake in choosing the best moment to act. Not at the moment of sideways trading when it's unclear where the price will go, but at the moment when there is liquidity, where there are certain levels from which clusters the price might reverse or break through and accelerate its decline, and so on. Not every trader can understand when is the best time to make a request. Also, not every trader could understand how it could be that the hourly chart shows a buy while the 4-hour chart shows a sell. And he didn't understand that, for example, the hourly movement is part of the 4-hour movement. Because of this, everything became a mess in his head and they didn't understand what they needed to do, whether to sell the asset or to buy the asset, because he never managed to form a complete picture of the market. So he already had a product. Here's a neural network where he can request a forecast. He would request a forecast on the hourly chart, on the 4-hour chart. And he would end up thinking, damn, something's off. This contradicts that. And he'd go, okay, that's it. This neural network is nonsense. I won't use it, and the subscription is expensive anyway. But in reality, he just didn't understand that the movement on the hourly chart was part of the 4-hour chart, and that's perfectly normal. For a complete picture of the market, it's best to request forecasts on the hourly, 4-hour, and daily charts. And then if the movement aligns on the 4-hour, hourly, and daily charts, you can generally enter this setup because all 3 time frames indicate that the price will continue moving with the trend. In that case, this signal is quite good, especially if the probability of it playing out is above, say, 65%. We took all these shortcomings into account and realized that in general, people don't want to figure anything out. They don't want to read analytics. They don't want to read the points that should, well, in general, they are meant to be used in order to properly utilize this auxiliary tool, which is powered by neural networks that process a huge cluster of data. That's why we tried to create filters, and now you can actually select these filters. That means you can now choose up to 10 assets where the neural network itself will search using primary filters by probability of success and by time frame, as well as by the risk to reward ratio, the best setups. And when these setups start to form in the market, it will send them to you. So now, in addition to being able to check your own strategies and technical analysis in real time by querying the neural network, you can also receive analytics and forecasts from the neural network itself, filtered by it as it scans the entire market for the best setups for you. For myself, I've noted that I've currently selected 7 assets. For each asset, You can even choose a different number of time frames, but it will be one ticker. So in fact, you can select 30 instruments, for example, 10 instruments with 3 different time frames each. And the neural network will send you alerts with the probability of the setup working out. Let's say I want to add Bitcoin on the 4-hour time frame. So I take Bitcoin, add it Bitcoin on Binance with a probability above 65%. That is, if the model shows above 65%, I consider that trade, meaning it makes sense for me to look further. If the neural network finds anything between 60 and 66% probability on the 4-hour chart for Bitcoin that the price will play out, right, the neural network will find that setup for you and send it to you. But then I say, okay, let's filter it even further. If the risk to reward ratio is above 1 to 3, meaning anything above 1 to 3, I'm willing to consider it. That is, I'm willing to risk 1% of my deposit to gain 3%. If such a setup exists, I'm ready to consider it and enter the trade. The neural network will search for it. So for example, if you're willing to set a stop loss of 50 points and it finds a potential profit of say 200 points, then that's already a 1 to 4 ratio, and such a setup can be considered. It will find it and send it to you right here, indicating the direction of movement, and you can enter the market. You just take it and click subscribe. And as you can see, this thing appeared showing that you've created a new subscription, and here it is. Now the neural network will search throughout the day on the 4-hour charts and make its own queries for Bitcoin so that the probability of the price movement model working out in advance is above 65% with a risk ratio of 1 to 3. If it's higher, it will notify you and send you a signal. Now, here's what the signals look like. So for example, on the 8th, I received a signal for gold and I entered on that signal. Here it is, and I'll expand it now so you can see what you get with this signal. You have the direction of movement as well as a forecast for each candle ahead for the next 10 candles. That is, if we are on the daily chart, that's 10 daily candles. And the probability of the forecast working out is 75%. That means the probability that this financial model, which the neural networks have projected ahead of time, will play out is over 75%. Our condition was 65% or higher. Only then do we consider the trade. The next condition was the risk ratio. If the risk ratio is higher than 3%, that is 1 to 3, then we also consider the trade. We look, the neural network shows us, here's our entry point. 4,047 is the take profit, 3,684. Of course, I would say that's far away, but most likely we'll get close to those values. Of course, it's unlikely we'll drop there in just 2 weeks, but I think we'll reach those levels. The corrective movement should bring us roughly to those values, but I think it will take a couple of months. And our stop loss is at 4,144. Let's see when the neural network sent this forecast. The neural network sent us this particular forecast on the 8th at 2 p.m. Naturally, at 2 p.m., I looked at this forecast, and then the following happened. On the 8th, I received another forecast from this very neural network. Let's see how the trade itself actually played out. We entered gold, and as we can see with gold, here is the actual gold trade. Right now, it's bringing us $6,890, and I saw this setup in the evening. Our servers were lagging, and not all signals were coming through immediately. We have successfully fixed that issue, and now everything is functioning exceptionally well. I honestly did not anticipate that when we officially launched our service, more than 200 distinct tickers that you would meticulously choose would prominently appear within the relatively short span of the next 20 minutes. I thought everyone would have roughly the same predictions, probably for the same tickers. I assumed it would be the British pound, euro, dollar, gold, Bitcoin, and so on, and that no one would choose anything else. I expected there would be a lot of requests for the Moscow exchange for crypto and for Forex, specific coins in crypto that are rarely requested. And it turned out that in the first few hours, you chose more than 200. There were so many types of tickers, and for each type, some people even selected several time frames. That's why the system started to get overwhelmed, because it began making a huge number of requests, searching for entry points, and naturally the trades didn't come in right away. So in the end, let's check. As a result, we have a trade on gold. Here at 1638 on October 8th, a signal came in for gold on the daily chart. So that's how this trade happened right now. It's the 10th. Here is the prediction itself, the forecast, the entry point, stop loss, and take profit. That is, the stop loss is marked by the red dashed line. Here it is indicated. The entry point is the blue dashed line, and the green one is the take profit. At the moment, this trade is bringing us 7,356. I opened it for $300, roughly speaking, on the 8th at 7 p.m. and not even at the predicted price, but at a more favorable price than the one the neural network gave us. You can see that our entry point is $4,047, but we entered it at $4,055. And our stop loss is already at break even, so we're not risking anything anymore. And we won't take less than $1 in profit because we've moved the trade to break even. Let's take a look at how the behavioral model looks on the daily chart at the moment, where the price is expected to immediately head downward. Supposedly on the 9th, it was supposed to go down right away and keep falling all day. In the end, on the 9th, we got a somewhat similar scenario. The price fell throughout the day, but naturally the amplitude of the move didn't quite reach the take profit level calculated by the neural network, and on the second day we saw consolidation. Of course, the amplitude isn't exactly the same as on the actual chart right away, but that's natural because the neural network doesn't predict the future like Vanga, but rather builds a financial model based on data that should play out. So according to its logic, the daily chart should have dropped now, and that's what happened. Then there's a kind of small flat phase where the price will fluctuate back and forth within a narrow range, and that's exactly what's happening. The price is moving back and forth right now. And roughly in 2 weeks, the next move will be a deeper correction, which is something we can observe. Next, what happened was that I requested a forecast for the Swiss franc to Japanese yen because I saw that we had updated the 190 level and almost reached 191. We were at historical highs, plus there was this kind of gap in the price history. And I requested a forecast from the neural network manually, not as a signal. Specifically, I requested it because I saw the setup myself. The neural network showed me that there was a 75% probability of the pattern working out, an entry point at 190.470, and a risk to reward ratio above 3. So we risk 0.5% there and should get almost 3% profit. That suited me overall, so I entered the trade. Let's see how it's playing out right now. At the moment, our trade is... Let's open the chart now for this ticker. Here's where our cross is located. In TradingView, everything will load now. And at the moment, this is what our trade looks like. It's bringing us $3,559. Our entry point is at 190.368. The stop loss is already set to break even for this trade. And if you look, this is how it looked for us. The entry point was 190.417. That's the price we entered at. Sorry, it was 190.368. A little less favorable because I didn't have time. The price immediately went down. You can see it dropped instantly. So while we were making the forecast and entering the price, the entry point shifted a bit. But that's not a big deal. The trade is already bringing us $3,537. I entered the trade with 2% because according to the conditions, we were above historical highs, which suited me just fine. And overall, I also decided to enter the trade because it was a good setup. More than 2%. Next, let's look at the position on the Japanese yen. The neural network signaled to me many times. On the Japanese yen, the neural network kept signaling that we should sell. 1 sell, 2 sells, 3 sells, 4 sells, but the price still isn't dropping. That happens sometimes. And right now, here is our entry point. I even entered once before, but my signal was closed by a stop loss. Now this is my second attempt to enter the trade, selling based on the neural network signal. But even if you do the math, if I close everything right now, I'm up more than $7,000 in profit because my first trade was closed by a stop loss at around $1,800. I entered with 1%, now I've entered with 2%, first to recover the losses and overall to take more profit. And also because the probability has increased, in other words, initially if we go in and take a look, our risk to reward ratio on those trades wasn't particularly high. Well, here it's 5, even 5, so 5. But that's because this is on the hourly chart. So if we look now, initially our predictions were around 3.16, but now if you check, the probability of success is already, say, 4.38, so it's already higher, it's higher now. So today it's already coming in higher, meaning the probability of success is even greater. So most likely sales are being loaded in, which is why the model is now considered higher. And the risk to reward ratio is also higher. So we enter such predictions. Now we're just waiting for it to play out. We can see from the financial model that the price might first try to update the current highs that have formed. There we have a stop loss set at 153 and above, and then from there with a sharp move it could go into a correction to cover this gap. Of course, I don't expect the price to go straight up and completely fill the gap that has formed here, but I'm considering taking profit according to the signal. At least we should try to cover half of the gap. If it doesn't work out, it's no big deal. We've covered the losses with other trades and we'll keep trading. There at 100 plus, our trade will close. So the risk to reward ratio is 1 to 3 or even 1 to 4 now, which is already pretty good. We're waiting for it to play out. Also, right now I have a trade. I've received a signal for the Canadian dollar. And I entered this trade. Right now, we've just had some moments, critical mistakes, and a server error. The server crashed, and that's because you selected a huge number of different instruments. So, for example, users weren't just choosing Forex or crypto, and the servers couldn't handle it because the neural network was constantly searching, constantly analyzing, and constantly calculating algorithms to select the best price movement models in advance. This is the kind of price movement model the neural network generated for the Canadian dollar, that the price should first go up for a correction and then from there make a sharp move down, essentially a reversal movement into a sell. Let's take a look at what actually happened with the Canadian dollar in the end. Here we can see on the hourly chart that the price, that's exactly what ultimately happened. The price initially moved up, though certainly not as strongly or as high, and then quite suddenly started to reverse its direction and head directly toward a substantial sell-off. So we've entered the setup, and maybe even in the next 4 hours, or rather the next day, I think I'll move this trade to break even so there's no risk, and I'll probably lock in part of the position as well. And let's also go over a trade on the British pound. We had a setup on the British pound. So it turns out that I opened the position yesterday. Yesterday we got a signal. It's probably a similar story here. Here is the British pound. The British pound gave us a signal, a sell signal. That's right, yes. The signal on the British pound shows us this kind of price movement ahead, that the price will immediately go into a correction. And I looked at this forecast. Overall, I liked everything because, in fact, according to this signal, if you take a look, it's not going up. It's a pretty good trade. I found a good entry point. I also like that, like upwards, that the probability of it working out is 74% and the risk reward ratio is almost 1 to 4. That's why I considered this trade. At the moment, the trade is at a loss, bringing us a loss of $780. The price didn't follow the scenario right away, but it hasn't reached the take profit yet either. I hope it hasn't hit the stop loss yet. Oh, sorry. Here we have the British pound. As you can see, now we're waiting for it to load. Here at this precise point was the initial entry point, and the price action then moved significantly like this, consolidating for a period, and then quite clearly it started moving even further down, continuing with the established trend. And I think that either if we continue, we'll get stopped out if it doesn't work out and they don't push further along the trend. And we break the day's balance. Today is Friday, let's say. So today, on Friday, we consolidate and reach this point. Then I think the scenario will be to decline. This scenario will move into a correction, the proper correction that the neural network indicated to us, and it will play out completely. According to the neural network's forecast and scenario, we'll make a decent profit overall. I think it's all clear. All the signals are being sent to us by the neural network. And right now, we can see that just about 20 minutes ago, we received a signal on gold. We're already at break even on gold. And that's a great confirmation that most likely the price movement downward will continue. Yes, the neural network is showing us that at the moment we might try to see a new low and a shakeout of everyone who started selling here and then another move into a correction. I can also consider such a scenario. So if that happens, we'll just re-enter a short position if our trade gets closed at break even. I think that's all clear. At this very moment, we have successfully fixed all the critical bugs related to the signals, thoroughly addressed all the persistent server issues, brought all the necessary servers completely online, significantly increased our overall server capacity, and consequently, there absolutely shouldn't be any more truly critical problems, even if you were to add, say, another 200 to 500 distinctly different types of financial tickers for the sophisticated neural network to diligently search for valuable signals for you. But regarding the fact that the number of spots for annual and semi-annual subscriptions is limited, that's because if, for example, a few hundred more users join and purchase semi-annual or annual subscriptions, they will most likely add new tickers, and most likely these will be completely different tickers than the ones already chosen by the current users. This will create a higher load on the servers and the neural network's capacity, and we might crash again. That's why we are limiting the number of sales. For annual and semi-annual subscriptions to the signals and to the neural network itself, specifically for this signal function, because it puts a heavy load on the server capacity, which in turn creates a significant gap in the financial sectors. Because of this, we might simply not function properly with interruptions, which we are trying to avoid. And if such problems occur during updates, we will fix them immediately. So if you encounter such issues, you can contact our manager. We will add a few days or maybe even a week to your subscription, depending on the type you had. As for forecasts and signals, I think everything is clear. I will continue to publish information, and we will keep adding new updates and improving the financial models and calculations of the neural network's financial models. The neural network is retrained every 2 weeks, so the signals and forecasts will only get better. Thank you all for your attention. This was Trading Way with you. Use technology and stay one step ahead of the market.